It's the Big Me Kickoff. It is Wednesday, October 25th. We are doing a taped show instead of a live one right now. We prefer to go live with the show, but just extenuating circumstances, we're going to tape it. And I kind of wish that I would have gotten off my rear end and did a show last night on Tuesday night when I was feeling much more, I don't know, piss and vinegar over the whole situation going on up north, as opposed to here in the morning where I am still kind of waking up, still kind of getting with it. My mentions have not calmed down at all, and we'll get into that here shortly. But let's get a little housekeeping out of the way. Again, you're watching the Big Me Kickoff, part of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, get the thumbs up. All of that certainly helps us out. Helps us with the algorithm, helps us know what content you like and maybe what you don't like as much. I know there have been a lot of people have been like, is this Buckeye Huddle or is this sign stealing Huddle? And there's, honestly, a lot of the conversation right now is around the Michigan allegations that are going on. And we've certainly got a lot of information over at Buckeye Huddle. Give us a look over there, sign up, check us out for price of a crummy delivery pizza a month. You can get all of your Buckeye coverage, analysis, X's and O's, all the greatest community that you can find out there in Buckeye Nation over there at Buckeye Huddle. So give us a look. Now that we got that out of the way, what are your thoughts about what is going on at Michigan? I certainly have been told 100 million times by Michigan fans that sign stealing is not illegal. And that is correct. It is not illegal to try and figure out signs. Just like in baseball, I mean, if runner at second base can sit there and try and look in at what, the catcher's calling and maybe try to tip off the batter, there are all sorts of mechanisms in place in sports for certain levels of gamesmanship, if you will, that can happen. And in doing so, it doesn't necessarily affect the spirit of the game, the sanctity of the game, any of that type of stuff. Where the issues arise from, though, are when you really fly in the face of the written rules. Nowhere in baseball's manual does it say that you can't try and look in and steal signs and do things of that nature? What it does say is you can't do things like the Houston Astros did. And I'm not going to get into that as much, as I don't really care about teams that are going to be in the World Series this year. And that's not the Astros, thank God. Sorry if you're an Astros fan, but I'm a Dodgers fan, so I don't like the Astros. Figuring out on the sideline what your opponent may be signaling in, not a crime. Off-campus scouting, going to games, electronic recording is a crime. And when it comes to an investigation, whether it be by the NC2A or the Big Ten, because the Big Ten certainly has grounds to act here as well. If I remember right, when Penn State ran afoul of a lot of things, I think the Big Ten got involved first. Big Ten has a lot more leeway and can intercede quicker than the NC2A slow-moving iceberg. So if you're going out and doing these types of things, and this isn't just a problem within Big Ten land. This isn't a problem of Michigan has allegedly, I keep trying to use that word, allegedly tried to do this with all of its opponents. 12 of 13 remaining Big Ten teams, because Michigan's not going to report on itself, have taken issue, have filed complaints, whatever the mechanism is, have come in. But now we're learning that it's other programs as well. And as our Mark Givler posted last night over at Buckeye Huddle, we have, through sources, learned that Clemson was a program that Michigan has scouted through the excellent reporting of Ross Dellinger and Dan Wetzel. I'm sorry, and Pete Thamel and guys like that, both, with at Yahoo and ESPN, Georgia and Oregon and some of these other programs have also seen Michigan agents, if you will, trying to steal signs. So what is it that you believe at this point? If you take all of this evidence that is out there, do you believe that this is something that Michigan has put in place? Or let's start at the bottom. This Connor Stallions guy, and I mean, maybe he pronounces it differently. I don't think he's talking to anybody, maybe short of an attorney right now. Was he a lone agent? Was this just his plan of, I'm a try hard, I'm going to do what I can to get noticed and maybe find a way to squirrel myself into some position within the Michigan organization by doing this? And I'm going to have it all underneath me, my team of agents that I'm going out and paying to record games, and everything else is unknown. Nobody knows anything. That's one level. Then there's another level of where it is an effort directed by Michigan without the knowledge of Jim Harbaugh, maybe without the knowledge of coaches directly, and all the things are there. But then you try to give Harbaugh plausible deniability. But as we know, over recent years, the NC2A has moved into the head coach is responsible for all interactions throughout his program. And, something to kind of prevent this type of situation of, well, I didn't direct that, so I can't tell you, well, who did? Well, I don't know. I don't know anything about this. Or is it something that came down from Harbaugh himself? I mean, if it's Harbaugh himself, holy hell, there's going to be a lot of bloodshed up in Michigan. If Harbaugh, quote unquote, had nothing to do with this, and we'll just take that at face value and say that he didn't in this scenario, he still falls victim of the head coach is responsible for everything. And if we go all the way down to the lowest level and say, well, this is just a lone agent, a tryhard, a jock sniffer, whatever you want to say, doing it on his own, don't you think that these Michigan coaches who are using the information might question at some point, where is it coming from? Are you a wizard? Are you a wizard and you can just figure this out on your own? So I don't think that bottom tier scenario is plausible. Now, they're also going to be the people who are going to say, well, no, they're just really good at pulling signals and figuring it out over the course of the game. Well, that doesn't hold any water either. As I put up this picture taken by our Tom Orr, there we go. And as you can see, there is a laminated, hole punched with like a ring around it chart with the Michigan coaches with a lot of hand signals. Now, I really hope nobody out there is foolish enough to believe that that chart is of what referee signals are. I really don't remember what false start looks like. We should probably have a chart that shows me what false start looks like versus face mask versus tripping versus, I don't know, illegal hands to the face. No, that's not going to be the case. And unless there is a Kinko's in section 24A at Ohio Stadium, that's not something that was made day of. You're not going to be able to have something there with color printing and graphics and lamination and everything else. That is something you brought into the game. You have brought that with you. And people are also going to sit there and try and tell me that, well, all 22 film is everywhere. We can find that. People fail to understand the difference between when ESPN puts 3 games a year, maybe 4, maybe a kickoff game, and then the entirety of the college football playoffs, the 2 semis and the championship game. They shoot their own all 22, which is not shot as tightly as regular all 22 footage. I've seen a lot of all 22 footage through my years in this industry. I've seen it at Ohio State, involving Ohio State games at home, Ohio State games on the road, games that Ohio State isn't even involved in. I've seen that footage. It is all shot tightly, sideline to sideline. That is where it is on the overhead view. And I'm sure a Michigan fan or 10 are going to sit there and show you some document about camera placements for all 22 footage. It doesn't mean anything. And the point of all 22 is shot sideline to sideline. And then there is an end zone camera as well. Has there been an instance before where all 22 film has been shot too wide? Yes. I was talking to somebody I know in the industry who told me a story about somebody sending out all 22 that was too wide and had some of that. I'm pretty sure that person got reassigned quickly. That is the exception, not the rule. That is the exception. Due to 1,000 different reasons, I can't post all 22 video online. There's just a lot of copyright issues and things of that nature. I don't directly have access to all 22. So it's not like I can just sit there and start pulling video out to show it for that sake. But ultimately, I can't show it because of copyright reasons. But I have posted on my Twitter, on my social media, X, whatever the hell it's called. I have posted screen grabs that I had sent to me by a coaching buddy of mine, not involved at Ohio State, but somebody who is somewhere between amused and furious with this whole situation. And it doesn't show the sidelines. 10 minutes before I started recording the show, I had somebody's like, yeah, well, that's cropped. No, it's not cropped. I can't post the whole shooting match because I don't know if there are any identifiers outside of the actual usable frame that might get my buddy in trouble. So I'm not going to show that. But hand to God, I did not crop out 1 pixel of what the actual footage looks like. Now, people are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. But I'm just telling you what all 22 looks like. And then again, there's the end zone camera, which is even easier to frame properly and make sure you're not getting any sidelines as you're shooting down on the footage to be able to see a lot of pre-snap action and things like that. There's no way that any of that footage is tipping off teams to what the signals look like. Plain and simple. If you believe that it is, then I don't know what to tell you. You must believe in the tooth fairy. You must believe a lot of things, but that's just not the case. So anybody who tells you that is full of it. And I think something else that doesn't help the situation is there is a certain class in the Michigan media that have interjected themselves into the conversation a little too much. And we've known kind of who the cheerleaders are and who aren't. And the cheerleaders are getting their pom-pom strands all over everything. They're throwing everything they can against the wall. We've gone through victim blaming. Well, this is just from a salty coach that is 0-2, which is wrong. It's 1-2, and 1-2 with a chicken out game in there too. Coach that just can't win the game. So this is all, this is all from the vivid imagination of Ryan Day, and other people are just getting involved chasing clout. Well, that didn't stick. Maybe it did with some people. I don't know, but that didn't stick. So now we've seen the lone agent of Wild Stallions. We've seen there are lots of places that you can get this footage that it has nothing to do with going out and breaking the rules. There's just a lot of diversion, a lot of subterfuge out there about where this information is coming from, and how it certainly would never, ever be at the request of the Michigan coaching staff. Not a chance. And let's look at this too. 2021 is when Connor Stalions really comes into the light. I know he was a hanger on earlier, but this is when it really comes into light. That's the same year Jim Harbaugh says about beating Ohio State, the necessity of beating Ohio State and Ohio State having his number. We're going to or die trying. Sounds like somebody who's pushed all of his chips into the middle as a medium pair. And all right, if they didn't, he's probably gone after 21. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily is, a direct indicator. I'm just saying there are dots there that you can connect, rightly or wrongly. It's up to you to decide if that's a case. But you also sit there and see Michigan going on some sort of streak of where they just can't lose. It's like they know what other teams are going to run since then. Again, not necessarily a body in the trunk and a smoking gun in the front seat, but the dots are there. Something to think about. You start to look at the totality of everything. You look at a post that was made on VolQuest of the On3 network, a Tennessee website, of somebody basically saying that Michigan is going all in prior to all this stuff really starting to come to pass. I've seen some other posts out there that if you look at the date, and yes, we're not talking necessarily metadata of where it's embedded, but these message boards can't be hacked by somebody to go in and change the dates. I mean, I guess theoretically somebody could go in, and if they know the font type and everything else, could alter the pictures. But it'd be easy enough if this were like a real case, if this were like a real criminal case to subpoena and get the metadata. There's just a lot of information there that doesn't necessarily look good for the team up north. So again, is he a lone agent? Is he acting on behalf of somebody? I'm not even going to get into the Venmo method of payment. I'm not even going to get into the fact that he is buying tickets singular in some ways, one seat on each side of the stadium, as in the case for Ohio State and Penn State, that he's not buying it under a false name or a shell corporation, for those of you who love techno thrillers and things like that. But that he's sitting there and having, pretty obvious Venmo payments, paying somebody for GA right around the time of a Georgia game, Ohio State, Georgia. It all, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, is it a duck? If it ain't a duck, it's a goose. It's duck adjacent at best. But I don't think that this is at best. I mean, I think this is all going to come home. Now, again, I will keep using terms alleged because we don't necessarily know. No, there's not been a confession. I've not seen footage of, of payoffs and handing stuff, but I certainly have seen footage of where it looks like Michigan knows what's coming. WBNS TV here in Columbus had footage posted by Adam King in their sports department of a play early in a game. Ohio State does kind of a tempo check with me situation. They back off. This is from 22, I guess. They back off, get the new signal, call the new signal, and then you can see in the background coaches and players from Michigan jumping up and down and pointing up and signaling something in. A defensive audible. They didn't necessarily know exactly what Ohio State was going to do just based on happenstance. Yes, there are a lot of keys you can read and have a feeling, and you'll always hear players say, oh, we really knew what they were going to run or on a specific play. Yeah, we knew their tendencies and they were going to go to this. But if you listen to James Franklin of Penn State, his press conference on Tuesday, he kind of alluded to some things. Ryan Day wasn't going to talk on it. That was too obvious. If Ryan Day talks on it, the Sour Grapes committee is going to get up and say, see, we told you, sour grapes, lost 2 games, born on third base. James Franklin, I mean, certainly he has an axe to grind and he has a hide to save. His record against top 10 teams and so on and so forth is not among the best. He needs to win this Michigan game this year, in my opinion. No, I don't think that he's like immediately on the hot seat, but I do think that there are people who are sick and tired of winning the games they should and not winning the ones that they shouldn't or should be equal in. But he kind of mentioned some things about where they would go into a situation and they would just get far away from what it is that they would normally do, like on a 4th and short or 3rd and short, and then suddenly Michigan would be out there in cover 2, which is not something that you would normally have in that situation, and would allude to the fact that you probably know what's coming. Now, I will say this too. Just because you know what is coming every single pitch doesn't mean that you're going to bat 1,000. Athletes are going to make plays. Your players may not make plays, even if you know what's coming. Randy Johnson at his prime could sit there and say, I'm going to throw you nothing but fastballs, nothing but 2-seam fastballs. That doesn't mean I can hit it. That doesn't mean that a professional, a lower level MLB player would be able to bat 1,000 at that point. Players are going to make plays. So I just want to get out ahead of the people of, well, if that's the case, why did Michigan have a close game against XYZ? Well, if Michigan had the play calls or at least the signals and had an idea of what's going on, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to have 100% success. The health of your own team, injuries, all of that come into play. Michigan almost spit the bit against Illinois. That was without Blake Corum. No amount of play signals is going to change the fact that they lost at that point the heart and soul of their offense. But with that being said, I don't understand how anybody who isn't neck deep in blue Kool-Aid can say that this isn't a big deal, because it is a big deal. And I don't care about sign stealing in the small sense. This is a major scale attempt to, it's not even to skirt the rules. It's to throw a middle finger up at the rules. I don't care about your rules. We're going to do this. Oh, well, it's just a dumb rule anyway. Well, it's still a rule. The same people that have put their head in the sand on this were all about Ohio State and its issues that it had coming through 2010, and we're probably calling for the death penalty over tattoos and merchandise, selling of trinkets. Now, on the flip side, the same fans that were saying, well, that's not a big deal, are like off with their head. But again, if we're really looking at situation versus situation, one has a direct impact in terms of the game itself. Another has to deal with the compensation or lack thereof of collegiate athletes and things that have been addressed-ish in this current iteration. Now, what is there that you can do about this? Sure, you could go to the NFL model and have the speaker in the helmet and things of that nature. And you're going to have the teams that have to sell all of their out-of-conference games in order to keep the program afloat and some other programs afloat, saying we're not going to be able to spend whatever it is on that technology, because it's not just a matter of going out and putting, I don't know, 80 grand on a credit card. There's upkeep and maintenance of the equipment. You probably have to have somebody who's able to be Johnny on the spot. There's a lot of hidden costs that are going to be there. But if you make this something that is commonplace, evolve or die at that point. I mean, I think it's great that more and more programs are trying to move up into 1A and into FBS. We're at 130. I think there's 3 that are in transition mode still right now from when you go up from FCS to FBS or make your jump. But there is an admission price to get into the park. And you've got to be able to do it if you're going to play with the big boys. So I do think that is going to be the future. I do think that you are going to have a situation of where you're going to have a couple of green dot helmets like in the NFL. Because as somebody said, in high school, you have technology. Granted, it's not the headsets, but there's communication. In pros, you have communication. And then in college, you don't. And it's going to be one of those issues again, where when you open this up to like the NC2A and they put together a blue ribbon award winning panel to try and decide on this, and like half the panel is from D3 and D2 or whatever, you're going to have to figure out how you do this. And I think that it's even outside of this whole Michigan allegation situation. I think it's just where the game needs to go. Look, I learned to play euchre as soon as I moved to Ohio. I did not grow up playing euchre. I grew up playing cards. And within a month of learning how to play euchre, I knew how to stack a deck and do things there. I understand that there is a level of gamesmanship that we all play. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with trying to find an advantage. If an opponent's starting corner goes out, I'm throwing right at his replacement over and over and over again until he proves to me that he can stop the offense. That is trying to get an advantage. There are other ways of trying to get an advantage, but when you sit there and you spit in the face of the integrity of the game by doing this, that's where I have an issue. Now, we know the NC2A moves like a stalled iceberg, but the Big Ten has the ability to intercede as well. And that doesn't mean that Michigan, and we're playing what if. I don't want to get a quote ripped out of this and taken out of context and have to explain myself 50 different times. So again, hypothetically, if the Big Ten finds that Michigan was doing this, the Big Ten can act with suspensions and things of that nature. yes, Michigan could go the court route. If the Big Ten were to take action and file injunctions, and this could really end up being ugly. And welcome to the league for West Coast teams. It's just one big happy family here in the Big Ten, but a lot can happen there. One thing I'm pretty confident in is we're probably seeing Jim Harbaugh's last season at Michigan. He wants to go to the pros. I mean, he has a difficult relationship with Ward Manuel, the AD at Michigan. And, this whole cheating episode, you can't fire me. I quit. I mean, he wants to go to the NFL in the worst way. I think he's still secretly holding out hope that the Vikings call him a couple years after the fact. But I just don't know why he would come back at this point. But the problem for Michigan is if there is some validity to these allegations, anybody with knowledge of this ploy, best word to use, I guess, ploy, should probably lose their jobs and have multiple years show causes. So I really would expect Michigan to dig its heels in, because these, you're cornered. I don't think there's going to be a case where, maybe one person could sit there and be like, yeah, I'd like to talk to you outside. All right. What are you going to do for me if I sit there and I show you where the bodies are buried? You may avoid the show cause, but then you've sat there and you've kind of gone against the family in terms of the coaching fraternity. You probably screwed at that point too, as I think that went out. So I think it's going to be a case of where there's not going to be a situation of where there's an admission if this is, again, these allegations are valid, because there's nowhere to go from there. There's no good spot to go from in that instance. But those are a couple of my thoughts on this. Again, I'm not here to try and break news on this. I'm not digging around. Well, I am digging around a little bit. I have talked to some friends at other programs, and I know some officials at certain programs, and have basically not gotten past the "can you believe this? No, I can't believe it" phase of those conversations. It'll be something interesting to watch. And I know it's something that Ohio State fans can't get enough of. Seeing Michigan twisting in the wind a little bit when Michigan has always looked down its nose at other programs, Ohio State primarily, and been like, well, the integrity and the honor of a Michigan man would never put the Wolverines in XYZ position. Well, assume the position, Michigan, because that is where you are at right now. And nobody is coming for your rescue. Till the next time, I'm Kevin Noon. It's the Big Me Kickoff. I'll talk to you soon.